Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and I just saw the new Picard trailer, and my initial reaction to it wasn't good. I thought it looked kind of terrible, and it has a few things which still piss me off. So I'm going to break down this trailer. I'm going to pause every time I want to say something. So we once again see that vineyard, and then we see Data standing there painting in his old uniform, and when I saw that it looked kind of ridiculous. It just looked way off, but then they revealed this is supposed to be some kind of dream or something, so I guess it makes it more forgivable. And then we see Picard in his old uniform. That's something I didn't notice the first time I watched it, that he's wearing his classic uniform from TNG with the rank of captain. And so I do kind of like that, because at least we finally see him back in that same uniform one more time. And so I can forgive the rest of the scene being so strange. And Data looks fine from afar or from behind, but once he turns to the camera, that just doesn't look so good. And I think if this is a dream sequence, couldn't it just have been Brent Spiner without any makeup? We would still have recognized him as Data, and if it's all in Picard's imagination, then it would be fine to see him as he imagined, as if he aged like everybody else. Maybe it would have been better off that way, because it looks like they're trying to make him look like he looked like before, and they put a lot of heavy makeup on him, and his hair is obviously a wig now, not his real hair, and something is off with his eyes, and so it all looks kind of terrible. And again, it's not the fault of the actor, but is this really the best they could have done? Couldn't they use a little bit of CGI, a little bit of all these new technologies that can de-age him? And we see that he painted a strange painting of some kind of woman whose face we cannot see, and apparently there's a cat there somewhere behind those waves. And that mysterious woman standing in that robe in that ocean, will that tie somehow to the plot? And how can it, if it's all a dream? How would Picard know any of that to make the dream? Unless you want to explain it with some kind of psychic connection, maybe to the Borg collective like he had in the past, maybe that can explain it somehow. Maybe Data's consciousness is alive somewhere and is sending him messages. Because if not, if it's all just a dream, if Data really is dead, then all of this scene is kind of meaningless. It's just an excuse to show the actor, to put him in the trailers, to lure the old fans to watch this. But if it won't be part of the plot, then this whole scene is meaningless and will be kind of annoying in my opinion. But in that other trailer we did see the body of Data, or of before. We did see an android body in some storage shelf or something, so maybe he will actually be in the show later on, and maybe only here it's a dream, so I hope so. Otherwise it will probably annoy me that they just put him here for no reason. And that painting hopefully will also be connected to the plot. Maybe that's the same woman that will come to seeking Picard's help later, so maybe all of this is symbolism and foreshadowing of something, so I hope so. Then we see some scenes of starships bombarding something, and then Picard wakes up. And then he actually calls his dog number one. I mean, I knew about it, but I thought it's kind of like a small joke. But if that's actually the dog's name, that will be kind of strange, especially since he meets Riker later on, and maybe he will leave his dog with him. So what will he say, that that dog's name is also number one, just like you? Isn't that kind of insulting to Riker? So that would be kind of awkward and strange, so I'm not sure I like this. Then we again see that chick coming to Picard for help. And there's a whole bunch of rumors about her. Some people speculate she's his daughter. Maybe she's half Borg queen, half Picard's daughter, because the queen had some kind of thing for Picard, so maybe she took his DNA and made a new future queen with his DNA in it or something. So I guess it's possible. I guess that would be a way to continue the show named Picard even without Picard, by having another Picard in it. But if that's the case, that will probably piss me off. And once again, we have that kind of character who is the key to everything, just like Michael Burnham in the other Star Trek show. So that's not a good thing, if that's where they'll go with it. Other speculations of her somehow being Lal, Data's daughter, I don't think will come true, even though that would have been interesting. That was my speculation when I first saw this actress, because she looks so similar to Data's daughter. I kind of speculated maybe they'll somehow introduce a new android who will have the memories of Lal taken out of before, from the memories of Data. That could have been an interesting idea, but most likely she will be tied with the Borg somehow. Maybe she was a future queen who somehow escaped the captivity from the Romulans, because apparently the Romulans are doing experiments on those Borg drones from the cube that they captured apparently, and so she might be from there. And she's seeking his help because she remembers him, maybe because his memories were in the collective, and so that's how she knows him. I guess we'll wait and see. and then we see a shot of the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's extremely annoying because this is the exact same shot that was used in Star Trek Discovery, which took place a century earlier, and I made a whole video just on this topic of this continuity issue because we saw the bridge in the other Star Trek shows and movies, and it didn't look like this. It didn't have those solar panels all across it. It had the trains or vehicles moving on it in the Star Trek movies, and in Star Trek Voyager we saw it with people walking on the bridge, and yet here apparently there is no road on the bridge at all. It's all used only for solar panels, and that's ridiculous because why would they even need solar energy in this future in which they have antimatter reactors and all of that? It makes no sense for them to need solar panels, and why not use the bridge for people to walk on it or to ride on it, as we saw in the other shows. We saw in the last episode of Voyager, we saw that bridge with people on it, and so this seems to be like a continuity issue, as well as confirming that this is all set in this new Discovery style universe, because they even use the same exact footage from Discovery, and we see the same kind of shuttles flying around and all of that. So this is apparently set in the Discovery universe, even though a century at least passed after that, actually even more than that, because Discovery was taking place about 90 years before TNG, and this is taking place 30 years after TNG, so this is 120 years after the time of Discovery, and yet the bridge and the shuttles look exactly like they did in Discovery. So this is the most annoying bit of footage in my opinion, especially because it's a continuity issue. So we are now supposed to accept that that's how the bridge looked like in Star Trek Discovery. I could maybe buy that, even though that by itself was a bit problematic, because we also saw the bridge in Star Trek Enterprise, which was a prequel, and it also didn't look like that, and then it was later again transformed for vehicles, and then it was used just for people to walk on by the time of Voyager, and then later by the time of Picard, suddenly it again was turned into another solar power plant, even though it makes no sense. Why would they need that? And so this is terrible. This is the single worst shot of this whole trailer, and it also confirms they're going for the STD stylistics and all of that, so I hate that. And we see a hologram of the Enterprise D. So I guess they're throwing us a bone because we'll probably never see this kind of ship on the show or anything like it, and they know it, and that's why they're showing us this pathetic hologram, so that we'll have something nostalgic to remember and to enjoy, because we'll probably not see any Starfleet ships in this show, at least not in the style of the old ones, and so they're throwing us a bone here, and so that kind of makes me annoyed as well, because I would have rather seen an actual ship like that and not just a hologram. Then Picard has to spell his name out to that ensign, because I guess no one remembers Picard. Oh, he only saved the Federation and the whole galaxy a few times, no big deal, no reason to remember such a person, so he has to ask him how to spell it. Then we see Picard in some kind of a huge library kind of thing, like the one from the Star Wars prequels, and once again a whole bunch of lens flares and all of that, so this is clearly STD style, which I don't like. And then we see what appears to be Sung type androids with numbers on their foreheads, and that I think is the most interesting part of this whole trailer, because this idea has a huge amount of potential. The whole idea of using androids as slaves, that's something that was brought up in one of the best episodes of TNG called Measure of a Man in season 2, which was about Starfleet wanting to dissect data in order to make more androids like him, to use them for dangerous missions and stuff like that, and then Guinan brought the point of it being like slavery, and that's a brilliant idea which was never really done on Star Trek. It was kind of touched upon with the holograms on Voyager. They sometimes show the holograms being used as slaves, and if they're sentient then that's a problem, but androids were never really exploited that way in Star Trek. And I always said that's an interesting idea to explore, which they never really did, because Data was kind of one of a kind. There were a few other androids once in a while, but no one was really using androids as slave labor or as soldiers, and I was always kind of wondering why not. That would actually be an interesting idea to play with, and so I am glad to see that apparently they will finally use this idea, because we see this whole bunch of androids standing at attention with letters and numbers on their foreheads, so I'm really curious about that. So that's one of the best things in this whole trailer in my opinion. Then we see what I assume to be that Borg cube, which was turned into kind of a prison, in which apparently they're liberating those Borg drones, but they're still keeping them prisoner. I guess it's all run by the Romulans, based on what we saw from the previous trailers. And they're wearing the same kind of red jumpsuits like those androids did, and so I'm guessing it's all in the same place. Maybe the Romulans are also trying to develop those Sung type androids for their own purposes, and so it all might be connected together. Then we see Picard arguing with Admiral Holdo from Starfleet. And I think on that screen in the background, that's the map of the galaxy. I think I recognize that as those maps, which I think are fan-made, by the way, of the Federation space. And the green one is the Romulan space. The red one is the Klingon space. I think I recognize that map, and so that's a nice touch, I guess. Even though shouldn't the galactic maps be three-dimensional, so it's kind of silly to see it as a two-dimensional map. But at least they don't overuse holograms and all of that like in Star Trek Discovery. So keeping all that stuff limited to a view screen maybe is better. And then we see Picard shouting at that Admiral about the ideals of the Federation and all of that. That is kind of like a classic Picard, and so I do kind of like it. But it also makes the rest of Starfleet and the Federation look bad, because except for him, no one else cares about whatever he cares about. So on the one hand, it makes Picard more heroic, on the other hand, it makes all of Starfleet look bad, and I'm not sure that's a good thing, and also that's the excuse for why he has to take his own crew of rogues and not Starfleet officers on his mission, on his quest, because he cannot rely on Starfleet anymore. And I have mixed feelings on that, because I would have wanted to see an actual Starfleet ship, and instead we'll probably be getting all those renegades and rogues, which I think is an idea stolen from one of the Star Trek fan movies. And it's another example of them trying to move away from the old Star Trek style, and I'm not sure I would have wanted the old Star Trek style of an actual Starfleet crew and all of that. And instead they're going with this kind of idea, and it might be interesting. It will make them kind of the underdog. They won't have the backup of all of Starfleet behind them, so there'll be just one ship with a small crew going on some kind of mission, so it can be interesting, but it once again makes all of Starfleet look bad in comparison. And also I'm guessing that's the reason they have Will Riker appear as if he's retired, he's not in Starfleet, that way he cannot help him out, and I guess Picard doesn't know anyone else who's in Starfleet. So all those people who served under him for decades, are none of them captains now, none of them are admirals now, so he literally has no one to turn to in the whole of Starfleet. That's kind of ridiculous in my opinion, so he has to go on his solo mission with a bunch of criminals with him. I'm not sure I like that whole idea. Then we see that chick in the rain, and it all looks kind of like Blade Runner style. And again, it doesn't really fit the tone of Star Trek. You know, in Star Trek, it's Earth is a paradise. It's supposed to be perfect weather. They have technology that can control the weather. They mentioned that a whole bunch of times in the old episodes of Star Trek. So shouldn't they have like the perfect weather? Maybe they're using rain like to wash the streets or something. Maybe it's in specific hours that they do want. But still, it all looks kind of too grim and dark and all of that, and the Earth is supposed to be a paradise in the Federation in the future. So why is the Blade Runner style? Then Picard is talking to some other old guy who I guess is his friend or something. Maybe it's another vision, maybe it's his dead brother that he imagines him. I actually think it would be an interesting idea to have Picard suffer from iromodic syndrome, which makes him senile. Maybe it makes him have visions, and that way we see what he sees, and maybe we won't be sure if what he sees is even real or not. I actually think that could be an interesting idea to play with, at least in one episode. So I would be open to that idea. I made a whole video just on that topic with some of my ideas of how such a story could be done, but they probably won't go there. Then we see Picard putting his comm badge on, and he wants to go back into space and all of that. I'm fine with that. And if they play around with the whole idea of a retired old man who wants to go back into the action, it can be good if done right, so I am optimistic with that. Then we see that same mountainous planet, which I think was used in a whole bunch of Star Trek episodes. I think it was Mintaka 3, I think it was that planet in which Kirk fought with that Gorn. It's also similar to some scenes on Vulcan. So are they deliberately picking the same spots to film in simply as kind of a subconscious nostalgia for us, or what? So he meets with some woman who knows him from the past, and he drinks his wine again. So is he giving everybody his bottles of wine because he doesn't know what to do with them because he has so many, so he just brings wine to everybody, or what? So anyway, this woman seems to imply that this is another unsanctioned rescue mission. So that might imply that that rescue mission that he led with the Armada that was mentioned in the previous trailer, maybe that was an unsanctioned mission that he initiated, maybe against the wishes of Starfleet. I'm guessing maybe to save some of the Romulan people when their sun went supernova. Maybe Starfleet didn't want to help out the Romulans, but Picard violated orders and he did save some of them, and maybe that's why he was forced to retire from Starfleet. So once again, this will make all of Starfleet look bad, and I don't think that's the vision of Gene Roddenberry, who wanted to show that all of humanity became better, not just the heroes, not just the crew of the ship that the show is about, but all of humanity became better. That was the vision of Gene Roddenberry. The Federation was supposed to be an enlightened society in the future in which everybody are better. And yet all these newer shows keep showing us that actually the Federation is corrupt, it's evil, only the main hero is the good guy, and he has to fight against these corrupt superiors. And I'm not sure that's the vision of Gene Roddenberry, even though those kinds of things were always in all the Star Trek shows, even in the original series and in TNG, it always had those evil admirals showing up and Picard having to stand up to them. So I think it's fine to an extent, but if they do it too much, it becomes ridiculous in retrospect. So all the admirals are always bad guys, and only our heroes are the only good guys, and so it makes the whole Federation and Starfleet look evil, and so that kind of destroys the whole vision of the bright future, in my opinion. So I think stuff like that should be done maybe a little bit once in a while. It shouldn't be done too often, and I feel like it's been done way too much. So apparently he recruits this woman to go with him on his unsanctioned rescue mission. I'm guessing maybe to save those Borg drones from the Romulans who are exploiting them or something. Maybe that chick who came to his house, she escaped from there, and so she told him all about it, and then he told Starfleet. But Starfleet doesn't want to help him, and so he now recruits people to go on this mission. Then he meets this scientist who I think probably is working on those androids, because I think that's the same place that we saw that disassembled the data parts previously in the previous trailer. So I'm guessing that was before, so maybe we will see him actually physically and not just in a dream form, I hope. And maybe it will be part of the plot somehow later. I hope so, otherwise the cameo of Brent Spiner will be basically a waste. So I hope he will be part of the plot somehow. And then Picard recruits that Legolas looking guy, who I guess is a Romulan. Maybe he saved him when he was a kid from that disaster that destroyed the Romulan Empire, and so this guy is loyal to Picard, and that's why he comes with him. We also see that guy who I'm guessing will be the captain of that ship, and that ship looks very STD style, which I don't like. Then we again see that Borg cube, and we see some Borg parts, and we see some people on tables. Then 7 of 9 is hugging someone. I guess that's someone she knows that she tried to save from that cube but failed. So maybe it's another former Borg drone that she knew somehow. Then we hear Picard telling some morality speeches, which I'm hoping will be good. I'm hoping the writing will be good. Otherwise it might just be cringy. Then we see a whole bunch of action scenes in space, and it looks like STD style with a bunch of lens flares and blurriness, so I don't like that. We do see an old style Romulan ship like in the original series, and that is interesting, because why would the Romulans be using such old warbirds unless maybe they didn't have a choice? Maybe because of what happened they had to resort to using their older ships from their scrapyards or something. But I would like to see the TNG style warbird, because I thought that was one of the coolest looking ships from the whole franchise, and so I hope we will see some of those. Then we see Picard fighting someone with a sword, and that actually looks great, because we know that Picard knows fencing. We saw that a bunch of times in TNG, that he was always fencing with someone in his free time, and so now we see him fighting with the sword. And I actually do kind of like that, even though I hope they won't overdo it. I hope they don't make him kind of overpowered. They won't make him kind of do flip-flops in the air or something, which would be ridiculous, because he's supposed to be a 90-year-old man in the show. So I would actually like to see that he is skilled, that he is able to defend himself and stand his ground and all of that, but I hope they won't make him overpowered with that. You know, like they did with Sulu in Star Trek 2009, in which Sulu was like a Jedi master jumping around doing flip-flops with a sword, just because the old Sulu used a sword in one of the old episodes, and so they made him like a master of sword fighting. So I hope they don't do something like that with Picard, because that would be kind of ridiculous, but showing him a little bit that he knows fencing, and maybe just this is all not the fight for the death, but instead just proving his courage and making that guy respect him or something. If it's that kind of scene, then it will be fine, it will be fun, and it's great to see a callback to the fact that Picard knows how to fence, and that even though he's old, he's still part of the action in some way. So I would actually like that, if they don't overdo it. Then we see some of the new characters, and they talk about that chick who came to Picard, who is the key to everything and all of that. That's kind of worrisome. I hope they won't overdo it. Again, if they do like a savior type of character, that she's the key to everything, she has to save the whole universe, that's kind of too ridiculous, so I hope they won't do that. And so apparently this guy will try to tempt this chick in order for her to tell him something. I don't know, it's too much like a soap opera for my taste. Some more shots of Legolas with a sword. Then a shot of Hugh, who's been de-Borgified. I actually like that part. I always liked the character of Hugh from TNG. I always wanted to see more of him, so I think it's great he will be in the show, as well as 7 of 9, and all of them teaming up together to save other former Borg drones is great, because, you know, Picard and 7 of 9 and Hugh, they were all Borg in the past who got liberated, so it would actually be great to see them team up to save other former Borg drones. I think this has some potential, and also it ties up loose ends from the previous shows, which is a good thing. Even though it's also a bit of a problem because, you know, I would have wanted to see a Star Trek show which is about new things, which is exploring the unknown, meeting new things, and not just recycling the old ideas. But if they tie up all the loose ends well, and maybe later on move to new things, that will be a good thing. And so I won't judge it until I see all of it. Maybe they will have a bunch of new ideas as well, hopefully. Like the part with the androids, which wasn't really done previously, and so I would like to see that. Then we see 7 of 9 shooting people with lens flares. That looks kind of bad. It looks kind of cheap looking, almost like fan fiction. But I do like her being in the show, because if I had to pick one character from Voyager to see a sequel about, that would be 7 of 9. And so I am glad that she's in the show. And then we suddenly see Jonathan Frakes in a modern looking house, cooking some dinner or something, which does fit the character of Riker, because we did see in a few episodes that he enjoys cooking, he enjoys making food. And so I can buy the idea that he's been a chef just for the fun of it. And apparently he now has a house with Troy, and they have a kid, they have a daughter, who apparently is named after Diana's dead sister. And so that's a nice attention to detail, and so I do like that. It is a little bit disappointing that we'll never get to see Riker as the captain of the USS Titan, because that's something that would have been fun to see. Instead we see the Rikers just living in a normal home on some planet, I guess. I hope it's not Earth, because that would be kind of ridiculous. How many people can get their own house on Earth? Because shouldn't the Earth be overpopulated by this point? How can you get your own house on Earth? What if you're a Starfleet captain, they'll give you your own house? How does that work exactly? So that opens up a whole bunch of questions. So I think it would be simpler to say this is on some colony or some other planet. And apparently they didn't see Picard in a long time, because they're so excited, they hug him. And so if it was on Earth, wouldn't it be easy to visit each other, just beam to whatever place you want in a second? But if it's on some other planet, it would be more reasonable. And I kind of hated this part of the trailer when I first saw it, maybe because it seems to be as if it's Jonathan Frakes and not Riker. It's like Jonathan Frakes being Jonathan Frakes. It doesn't feel like Riker, because it's kind of being funny, kind of behaving like Jonathan Frakes, not really as Riker. Also the way he turns to look at Picard was kind of funny, kind of strange, I don't know. Something about it feels kind of off, in my opinion. Hopefully the actual scene will be better than those glimpses we see here. Again, a whole bunch of space battles with lens flares and blurriness and all of that. That's the STD style that I'm really worried about. Now we see Picard, Hugh, and that Lal chick all together, apparently in a Borg cube. I'm guessing they're saving all those Borg drones. We see Lal being burned by something. I think that's the same place where she had that action scene fighting with some men who tried to kidnap her. Then we see Picard and Riker sitting at that lake. And my problem with this whole scene is that apparently Riker is retired, and so he won't really be part of the story in any way. So if this is a cameo just for the sake of a cameo, then I will find it annoying, just like the Brent Spiner cameo. Then it's basically just like a honey trap for the fans. It's basically to lure us to watch this, but it won't really be about any of this, and then I will find it annoying. So that's my thoughts on this trailer for now. Let me know what you think, and we can discuss it in the comment section, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.